Mark, are you ready? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Village of Campton Hills to order. It is May 7th, 7 o'clock p.m. Please rise for the pledge.
Roll call?
And, oh, I'm sorry, roll call. Go ahead.
Trustee Boatner?
Here.
Trustee Burson?
Here.
Trustee McElvey?
Present.
Trustee Millette?
Present.
Trustee Morgan?
Here.
Trustee Muncy?
Here.
President Winicky?
Present. Now, please rise for the pledge. James, please lead us in the pledge. Okay, we're going to start our meeting with police recognition. Our police chief, James Levand, graduated from Northwestern Center for Public Safety School of Police Staff and Command Class number 565. Yay, congratulations. I will, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I should know because I'm used to Trustee Morgan's different work he does between wood and metal, and everything he does is amazing, so is this. Coda's been a recipient of many of his awesome artwork, so thank you. Thank you to the president, the trustees, special thanks to two of the guys. There's 43 of us total that was in this program, and the program was 10 weeks long. It was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, so it took us about 4.5 months. It's the most prestigious executive law enforcement program you can go to, not just in the United States, it's taught worldwide. So it was an honor, it was a privilege, but it was more enjoyable because of these guys like Jason and Josh that are here now, that actually came out and were a part of this, so it means a lot. But it was a great program, it was a great opportunity, took a lot of time. I said once I did college once, I would never do college again, and unfortunately I did. And it was a lot, so, but it was worth it, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, James, and thank you, Tim Morgan, for your beautiful project. Yeah. All right, we're going to move on to the new police officers, our new full-time officers, oath of office. Start out with Sina. Raise your right hand. I, Sina, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United State of Illinois, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, the ordinances of the Village of Campton Hills, the ordinance of the Village of Campton Hills, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of police officer for the Village of Campton Hills, according to the best of my ability. Okay, can we take a short recess?
No.
Are we gonna take a short recess or no? No, okay. Okay, we'll move on to public comment.
Neil Anderson?
It's nice to see some kids here. I'm Neil Anderson. I live on 4N928 Brown Road. I also own and run Luau Coffee. Back in 2007, the residents voted to incorporate with the idea of maybe a promise that we would not enact any village taxes. For the last 25 to 30 years, the residents brought forward any new or additional taxes. The residents were given the opportunity to discuss the pros and cons before it was voted on. To bring these items to a vote without resident input is a tragedy. These proposals are on the agenda as a tax. As you know, restaurants in Campton Hills have been struggling. What we did to establishments during COVID was criminal. It's hard enough to run a business, let alone pay a tax. These proposals are for big cities, not Campton Hills. The residents live here for the country feel, not more government, regulations, or taxes. We don't want to be an Elgin. Please vote these and any new taxes down. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Charlie Griffey?
Hello, I'm Charlie Griffey. I got to go along with Neil that the whole reason that we became a village was because we were promised that we weren't going to be levied taxes like the big cities and everything else. Now I'm looking, I see 3 of them on this agenda tonight that you're going to vote on without any discussion with the public. I've heard rumors that we're trying to do a bond for like $25 million. Now, maybe this is a rumor, before you shake your head no. And, you know, that's just going to increase real estate taxes more that we're struggling paying already because most of us are seniors, we're retired, we're on fixed incomes, and to start putting huge bonds on the village for us to pay for. You know, it wasn't real hard to get a village here, and it wouldn't be real hard to get rid of a village. And this is what happened. Remember, Valley View used to be a village, and Valley View started this taxing crap and all that. Valley View is no longer there anymore. So I just hope you think real strong about placing taxes, especially on restaurants and businesses and senior citizens, before you vote on all this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Can I just make a quick comment? I thought you were going to announce that we're going to not vote on those tonight.
We are, that's true, we are not voting on those
Okay, well,
tonight.
at least they should maybe know that, at least, that we
Okay.
are going to have some discussion, that's
Okay.
all.
President
Thank
Winnicki, may
you.
I say something? We've had this conversation. I thought you were going to say this. I'll just say it.
Sure.
We're not voting on these tonight. We appreciate and still want the public comment, though. They were put on the agenda. However, the schedule, as I understand it now, is going to be that we may discuss them somewhat tonight and hear public comment. We will have a presentation for everyone on the 21st, our next meeting, that will have detailed analysis of why we would even consider these sorts of things. We'll have further discussion on them on June 4th. We may even consider having an early meeting to allow more public input, and then we wouldn't vote on those till at least June 4th. So it's not like these are getting voted tonight, these are without public input. This is something that there will be a schedule for, and we are just considering, and we'll give you all the reasons why we would consider anything like this, and then, allow for everybody to have input.
Yeah, thank you, trustee Muncy. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, go ahead, Teresa.
Jim Dillon?
Hi, hello again. Jim Dillon, I'm here with a few of my neighbors. We are in the Burning Tree subdivision. Most of you know that already. I'm really just actually here to follow up with the last couple of meetings and see where we're at as far as with the Smurf fund goes and what you guys think we should be doing next. Will we be having issues getting permits to get this water problem fixed? So basically, it's really just to let you know we're still here, problem's still there. Rain today, we got lots of water again. So it's just kind of looking for an update of where we're at and what our next step should be to get this reconciled.
Okay,
Just, we normally don't answer everything, Jim,
Yeah,
but
I
just so
understand.
you'd see, it's later on the agenda under discussion for the stormwater. We've looked and reviewed the proposals that you've submitted. We'll discuss those in some depth at the latter part of the agenda and move it to the next meeting for action.
Okay.
And that action could be, up to $10,000 or 50% of the cost. That doesn't mean that's the number until they discuss it. But
Understood.
they've got your two proposals. We've reviewed it with Trotter Engineering. There's no Army Corps permit. That was a misinformation that was rumored. There is no permit with the county, and there's no village permit unless you remove 250 cubic yards of dirt from the site. And I know you don't intend on doing that, so there wouldn't be any permit. So that's the status of that, and it'll be discussed at the latter part of this agenda.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Carrie Baytog? Larry?
Larry.
Larry.
Thank you for having me. My name is Larry Betteg. I live in St. Charles over off of Burlington and Bolcom. On this, I've lived here my whole life, and my biggest regret is moving into a place that became Campton Hills. I fought against it. I hated it. I knew that at some point they would be talking about raising taxes. I could not disconnect. Everyone else disconnected. They were more fortunate and blessed than I was. I'm stuck here. I have a commercial space here. I don't know who pays attention, but the commercial space out here has plummeted. It's plummeted. The price per square foot is falling across the board. I don't understand the need for more taxes at any level from anyone out here. It's ludicrous. I don't know if people see that Rome is burning. We have the highest foreclosure and delinquencies that we've had since 2007, 2008. For the first time in the history of the United States, you have the fastest liquidation of 401ks in the United States. It's a fire sale. And we're talking about more taxes at any level. Why are we talking about them? We, as a government entity, got to think about Rome is burning. People are in the middle of a firestorm. And what are we doing to help them? It can't be the idea of, let's wait till June 4th and think about more taxes. I'm a very even keel guy. But you're attacking myself, you're attacking my family, you're attacking my business. It's an attack. You're supposed to be on the side of us. Any raise of taxes is an assault on us. Rome is burning right now. Take a look at everybody around here. Do the right thing. Flip the switch. Flip and think about what can we do to make things better for the people here, not worse.
Thank you, Larry. All right. We'll close public comments. We'll move on to 5, consent agenda. Anything to remove from the consent agenda? Jim?
Yes, I'd like to see the warrant B, just the B portion removed.
Okay.
And I'd like,
Go ahead.
5G, removed as well, please.
5G. Any other items to remove? Okay. I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5B and 5G, and we'll go into discussion for
I
those.
so move.
Moved by McKelvey, second
Second
by
it.
Morgan. All right. Okay, we'll go on to roll call, I'm sorry.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Thank you.
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim, 5B.
Yeah, the question I have on 5B is, I'm looking at the warrant and the bill for Kenneth Shepro for $4,357.50. The question I have regarding it, and there was detail, so I saw that the hours and everything were slated there. It was roughly 25 hours at $175 an hour. But the question I have is that if you look at the detail of the invoice, it started basically with his beginning with us back on May 2nd. On June 6th of last year, there was a vote to hire Mr. Shepro with a $5,000 retainer. And to this point, to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen any detail back from that retainer. So the way I look at this is you're asking me now to approve another $4,357.50 for Mr. Shepro without knowing what the $5,000 went for. Because when that was voted on, it was given 175, so that's roughly 35 hours of work. Usually what happens when you have a retainer, the lawyers will come back and say, oh, you got $100 coming back, I didn't spend it all. Or you got $200 that you owe me, or whatever. We got nothing. So you're asking me to approve a bill, and I have seen nothing on the $5,000, and I can't do that. So I asked this board not to pay this bill, not because I don't want to pay the bill, I see the work. I want detail back on that $5,000 to see what hours and what actually was done. And I think that's only right in showing, our accountability to the village citizens that we're doing our due diligence. And I can't vote for this bill to be paid because I want to see the detail around the $5,000 that this board approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, do I have a motion then on 5B?
I'll make a motion not to pay this particular bill until we get detail back to the board, showing exactly how that first $5,000 retainer was spent and the detail around it.
Okay. And Trustee Muncy, of a second?
Well, second, yes, but I don't know if I need to amend that. We also need to make a motion to approve payment
The remainder.
of all the other bills.
Well, yeah, I'm not against that, but I thought
Yeah.
I just want to make sure this does not get paid.
We already paid it.
Yeah, obviously I say, I'm
We
for
paid
the
the other
others.
Okay.
We already did that with that first, didn't we?
No,
No.
we did not. No, we did not. She asked me for a motion, I said, I just want this pulled out.
Okay.
So,
Good point.
so I would vote on this pulling out, and then let's go back and vote on, because I'm all for the
Well,
others.
may I clean it up or try to?
Yeah.
Sure.
A motion to approve payment of bills per warrant list 24-23,
With the
except for
exception.
invoice 24-4-26 from Kenneth Shepro.
Okay, second by Jim McKelvey. Okay, any other discussion? Trustee Millet?
Sorry, we supposed to have a number, so I'm trying to do the number here real quick. Somebody keep talking while I do the number?
We got to take a vote.
No, I'm going to give you the new amount.
Okay.
The full warrant list minus the.
I'm doing it right now. There it is. Okay. 43,57. All right,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is the way it goes, right? Okay, so if my understanding is then the warrant would be $48,779.10.
Yes.
Okay. All right, roll call to move forward on 5B.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey? Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We'll go on to 5G, Motion to approve and consent to the village president's reappointment of H.R. Green Incorporated as village engineers through October 31st, 2024.
Yes, thank you, President Winnicke. You know, HR Green has been doing a great job explaining a lot of stuff to us recently about different road programs, about what we're looking to do. But we have not had an RFQ for a village engineer since 2018. In looking at potentially doing that in the future, just to do our due diligence every once in a while, if I look at the date this would go through, October 31st, I don't think that gives us enough time to do an RFQ from October 31st to the winter dates when we want to be getting our bids out. So I think we would hamper our next year's bidding if we waited this long to do an RFQ on a village engineer. So I just want to open that up for discussion to see what the board thinks, if we should do an RFQ sooner, if we should do an RFQ at all. I'd just like to hear everybody's thoughts.
Okay, discussion. Trustee Burson?
I am definitely in favor of doing an RFQ, and I think sooner rather than later. Again, not because HR Green has done anything wrong that I'm aware of. They seem to be doing a quite good job. But to Trustee Muncie's point, you know, we haven't done this in a while, and we should be surveying the landscape of what is available to us, other than just continuing to re-up for the same program that we have before. And timing for these things does matter. Perhaps we can consider an extension of the contract that we have, and then start on an RFQ process that would allow us to, you know, get to, what are we thinking, Trustee Muncie, to first quarter of 2025, you know, where we would have that decision made so that we would proceed with the bid process?
If I may address that directly.
Not for engineering, but for the bid process for roads. Is
Go
that all
ahead,
right for-
Trustee Muncie.
I'm just not sure I understand what Trustee Burson is putting forward. Are you saying that we would extend the current agreement with HR Green until first quarter of 2025?
No, I'm saying we would extend it for, let's say, 3 months, such that we would be able to undertake an RFQ, make a selection, and be ready in first quarter of 2025 to move forward with whatever that selection was, which may in fact end up being HR Green, we don't know.
Mark, do you want to just? Well, first let Mike go.
Well, yeah, I think
Okay.
that's possible, but I would kind of explain to the board, I think from you have 457,000 generally in MFT monies, and then you supplement with any unspent of that budget year, that spring, and then take some funds from the cash reserve to get to a 750, 800, or even $1 million. And I think on this, you're set this year for 816,000 with the possibility of discussing some maintenance later in this discussion with HR Green at the bottom of the agenda. And next year, on the bypass list with KDOT, I'd look for Mr. Trustee Millette to speak to the 3 roads that could be on that bypass. Our 25% of that next spring, if it's constructed, if we're selected on all 3 roads of Danker, Brown, and Town Hall, our 25% could be close to $1 million. So I think that your next year's program is pretty well established based on what I think that Trustee Millette can speak to at KDOT on that bypass. So you're right, unless you go into your cash reserves another 750 pure, I don't think you're gonna have a set of roads other than those 3 next summer, unless you're willing to spend down a considerable amount of your cash reserves.
Trustee Millette, go ahead.
Actually, my point to this, I was just gonna say, is just remind everybody, you know, that this doesn't include what's going on right now. They're already under contract for this year's program. We're talking about setting next year's program, which, to your point, may be easy. Because it may be,
We've already paid for the
yeah,
engineer
it may be already done with that. But we would still need somebody to do the construction observation. So, to the question, you could, and this is advice and consent, you could, the RFQ process, I mean, you could get that going at the end of summer. That could be going through, the fall, you probably would want a new or same new village engineer by the beginning of next year. So does that mean you extend this just to December 31st while we're doing that process? You could do it that way. You could say October 31st is here, then that means it puts more of a, it sets a different time frame for it. That means we would have to do the RFP process in such time as to have a replacement or the same new engineer by the October 31st. So I could go either way. It's just, that's what I was thinking.
But my point is, you've already paid HR Green 200,000, almost 200,000 to engineer those 3 roads to get on the KDOT bypass list. That will be next year, so if you did an RFQ this fall or next winter, you're not gonna have a new engineer, even if it's a different engineering firm, design anything until, for the January of '26 to get something bid out in March of '26 for the summer construction of '26, because you're already into the engineering for the KDOT 3 roads for next, not this summer, but the following summer.
Go ahead,
While-
trustee Muncy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Administrator Rooney. While I understand all of that, that's clear, I get it. But it's predicated on that we get all 3 roads. That we may not. We may be scrambling for what is our program for next year. Maybe a smaller program. We may get 1 road, 2 roads, or none. So I just want to be prepared for that. And that's why I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. It's not a done deal, if you will, that we get all 3 roads next year. There may be some engineering needed and some projects that we need to get bid in January, February. So I just want to keep that on everybody's radar. If we keep this as October 31st, knowing that we just kind of keep that timeline, and, you know, we keep, again, thanking HR Green for their valued services, is no reflection upon that. It's just doing our due diligence. At some point, we do have to do this.
So, well, we would, if we get moved up for KDOT, we would probably know, first flush would be our July meeting, and then there's an October meeting. So it could be either of those. It also could go until the February meeting. It depends on who else is moving their stuff up at the same time. So I think actually what Trustee Muncy said just now makes sense, is yeah, we may get 1, 2, or 3, or none. So having this date is fine. We just need to make a conscious effort that the RFQ needs to be issued like right after Labor Day. Would be a good time frame. And then we do the interviews if we want interviews, we evaluate the proposals, et cetera. And that we know that by, I guess we should probably tie it to the board date, I guess. Sure. So, I mean, whatever that third meeting, the third Tuesday in October is, we would need to make a decision by then, one way or another, so that we would know what's going on the 31st. So I mean, we can keep it this way as long as we all understand that that's our time frame.
And I could report in October.
You put your mic on, yeah.
Light went off. The first meeting in October, a list of engineering firms to consider for requesting September, requesting the firms to submit their qualifications to be the village engineer. And then we could be in October, November, setting up interviews. And you could pick a subcommittee of the board or the entire board to do that, but you don't have to decide that now. But I think leaving the October 31st serves us well the way it is, and we can start that process in September. And I'll commit to you that I'll start that and working with Trustee Millette and submit names in September for the board to approve of engineering firms.
Okay, trustee Muncy.
Okay, so move to approve
Good.
and consent to the village president's appointment of HR Green as a village engineer through October 31st, 2024.
Good. I'll have a
Second.
second. Second by trustee Millette. Roll call.
Trustee Muncy.
Aye.
Trustee Millette.
Aye.
Trustee Boatner.
Aye.
Trustee Burson.
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey.
Aye.
And Trustee Morgan.
Aye.
Good. Motion passes. Okay, moving on, we'll go to staff reports. Chief Levand on our police department.
All right, I'll make this quick for everyone tonight. So for the April activity, 145 calls for service, 8 accidents, which 4 were injuries, 38 citations, 2 arrests that involved DUI. I just want to say that I'm proud of both Stavi and Julie, who were sworn in full-time. They're great assets to the department. I stated when I was interim chief and then chief of police, my biggest goal was to bring the most professional and diverse agency that represents our community here, and that's 2 good steps towards it. You have 2 excellent officers that are extremely professional, and one of them speaks 4 different languages, which has been used by different municipalities. So that's a huge benefit to the community. And not to mention, Stavi lives in town, has children in town, goes to local schools. So both of them, it's a great asset to the department and the village. I want to thank the Fire and Police Commission. They finally have finished up. It was a long process. They did the entry level and the lateral testing process for openings. Took a long time, so they were great. So we finally have the list getting compiled. We have a couple more candidates that I have to have go through polygraph tests and some more backgrounds, but they did a great job for us. And the flock camera should be going in by the end of this month, and that is all I have, unless there's any questions.
All right. Any questions for Chief Levand? All right, thank you. All right, moving on, Kim Muir, would you like to give us a short report on telecom? Technology. Okay.
Okay, Kim Muir, Chair of the Technology Committee, Ad hoc Technology Committee. A couple things, we've been meeting, we've had at least 6 meetings, 7 meetings now. We got our schedule put together. We did make a recommendation to the village administrator for immediate implementation as humanly possible as that we could do that, was to initiate multi-factor authentication on at least the Microsoft 365 domain. We are recommending for most of the full-time, part-time staff, along with the officers, to use USB key fobs. Everybody else will be requesting at least an authenticator app. The cost of those fobs, there's no cost for the authenticator apps, so you know. The fobs won't cost us potentially more than $1,000, which we already have budget for. So we have a line item for that. Some of the other things that we're recommending and pointing towards as immediate thing to do is to reevaluate and suggest that we go to either an enterprise 3-level licensing or a government 3 licensing on the Microsoft 365 tenant. This will help us gain a few more security controls and some other things that we do need. I think in a discussion that I had with Administrator Rooney and Trustee Burson that we're kind of leaning towards the government 3 license because it has some of the additional safeguards and it's certified by the government to adhere to some of the new standards that are in place. Some stuff that wasn't in place back in 2007 when we started this. So the government 3 license is something relatively new. I personally recommend it, and the committee recommends it as well. Some of the other things that we're doing, we do have 2 subcommittees that are looking at the needs of the village staff and the police department, so there's interviews going there on there. The other committee is looking at our infrastructure with the eventual goal of just putting basic infrastructure in here and things that are needed by the police department and whatnot to make sure that we've got everything covered and it's secure as it possibly can be in our current climate. Also, another thing is in putting together, we're going to take advantage of something that's in our Helping Hand contract about having monthly meetings with our, quote, CIO, if you will, which happens to be Helping Hands, and get together and start doing management and update meetings. That's about where we rest right now. Is there any questions?
Okay, any questions for Kim?
No?
Thank you. That
Okay,
was
doing my job, I guess.
Yeah, that was a great report. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to action items. 7A, motion to approve ordinance 24-12, an ordinance amending Chapter 1 of Title 4 of the Village Code of Campton Hills, Kane County, Illinois, establishing the number of available liquor licenses. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Moved by trustee Morgan.
Second.
Second by trustee Burson. This liquor license will go to the new Squire Ale House, which is going where the lodge was, and of course the Silverado. So we're pretty
Bob
excited
here?
about.
You can see if Bob is here. If Bob is here,
Is Bob here? I don't know. Is Bob here?
did he make it? No.
Okay. So anyway, that's pretty exciting. That'll be opening pretty soon, and yeah, that's it. So, all right, roll call.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, action item 7B, motion to amend the motion of Resolution R-2404, authorizing the execution of an agreement for roadway design engineering services with H.R. Green Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $200,000 from the April 2nd, 2024 Village Board regular meeting to remove Danker Road from the roadway design engineering process. I'll entertain a motion. Moved by,
May I make a motion to remove this? What would that motion?
no,
No.
no,
Cannot.
no.
Motion,
Okay,
it's okay. No.
no,
No.
no, it's, no. Motion for, motion to move it forward, then we can discuss.
Perfect. Motion to
Okay.
move it forward.
Trustee Boatner, second by,
Or no second and it fails.
is that a second? Second by? Okay. Have it fail? All right. Motion fails. All right. That's it?
That's it.
Moving on to 7C, motion to approve Resolution 24-09, authorizing execution of an employee leasing agreement with GovTemps USA LLC for building and zoning officer James Brown. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Muncy.
Moved by trustee Muncy,
I'll second
second
it.
by trustee Morgan. Any discussion? Trustee Muncy.
Yes, I have some questions. So we were given a board summary memo dated May 7th today that states that the title is the Building and Zoning Officer, but the scope of work was to work with the village's zoning commission on the village's zoning ordinance. And that's all. The Building and Zoning Officer, I would assume, does more than just works with the zoning commission on the zoning ordinance, correct? Yes. Okay, so there is more to it than that. Good. The other, also, the Building and Zoning Officer is a budgeted line item, which is good. I just wanted to make sure that either the administrator and our president, and I guess the board as a whole, agrees with the 16% increase in hourly rate from $84 an hour to $98 an hour. And just wondering, is that because, I guess, why is that?
H.R. Green I'm sorry, H.R. Green, GovHR, they've been combined with the outfit in Florida, and their kind of annual spring, they know a lot of budgets are approved, and they're looking for a rate increase for his professional services. I think he'll get about $11 of that money, and the rest goes to the firm itself. His hourly rate will go up about $11, and the rest goes to the GovHR.
Okay, but this remains with, it doesn't negatively affect our budget line item for this, correct?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't.
Okay. Any other, trustee Burson?
I understand what the normal scope of the building and zoning officer is. At this time, with the zoning ordinance in flux, are we pursuing zoning enforcement actions that the BZO would typically be involved in?
We have had 2 or 3 discussions since October when I came on board, but we've not actually implemented any action of finding of someone in the village and anywhere is a residential property or a commercial that's in violation. There's been negotiations and changes that have been negotiated with different parties, but we haven't had an action.
Great, thank you.
And he does go to the adjudication hearings.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to D, actually, I was going to table D, E, G, and F. However, we'd like to keep them on the agenda, not as action items, but discussion. So I will start with item D, motion to approve ordinance 24-07, an ordinance adopting an amusement tax for the village of Campton Hills, Illinois. And this will be strictly for discussion. Do I have a motion to move?
Motion to discuss? I mean,
okay.
What's the motion?
Okay,
Yeah, we don't need a motion, right? We're just gonna, this is just a discussion item.
okay, we'll open the discussion. Who's first? Trustee Burson?
So this is a tricky item. Nobody wants to see any of these taxes, obviously. I think it's important to understand that the sort of pledge regarding local taxes here was primarily related to property taxes. And the village has collected utility taxes from its inception. And so this particular tax, the amusement tax, is an unfortunate name, right? Because we're not talking about pinball machines or something, which is what we might think, you know, in an old-timey way that amusement tax might relate to. So what this is, as I understand it, is really a tax on streaming services. And this tax on streaming services, if we were to implement it, is intended primarily to defray the revenue that we are losing every day as people cut the cord, and the franchise tax that we've been collecting for many years is reduced. And people who were on the board many years ago, and I've talked with Trustee Millet a little bit about this, know that in the early days, the village went through quite an effort to first successfully make the claim that they should be able to assess those taxes and get that money clawed back from the county. In the case of the streaming tax here, it's not going to work quite that way. The franchise tax was being collected by the county and possibly other neighboring municipalities, and the village was able to get that back for its own residents. In the case of the streaming tax, or this amusement tax as it's called here, we're talking about a tax on streaming services like Netflix and Max and Hulu and so forth, right? And the notion is that as the franchise tax goes away, which was a six-figure number on our budget, that we might be able to replace some of that revenue that truly does go away with cord cutting with a different type of tax. The state of Illinois requires us to call it an amusement tax, as I understand it. Is that?
User fee.
Right. Well, to the residents, I think a tax is a tax. So the euphemism user fee, I don't think that helps very much. But
That's what Illinois calls it.
right. So I don't know that euphemism helps. But if it helps at all, I think the explanation, as I understand it, for why we're seeking this is really as a replacement for revenue that we're losing from the franchise fee.
Yes, and if you ever had a movie theater come in, then the seats that you sell at a movie theater are the traditional suburbs that enacted these. It was to get amusements, or if you're the Kane County Cougars, those seats. So any amusement that can be defined broadly, but in our case, it's really the streaming services to replace the franchise fees is pretty much what we discussed at the finance subcommittee
But traditionally,
meetings.
people sort of thought amusements were in-person amusements, right?
Yes,
So this is an extension.
it's an extension.
Okay, well said, thank you for bringing up Comcast. Trustee Muncy was next.
Thank you, President Winnicke. Just a few comments. On page 71 of the packets, the amusement tax, the first page of that, under the sixth whereas, to promote the general health, safety, and welfare of the village and its residents within the village. If we're to consider these or any of the three taxes, I would like to tie this to roads. It's not some promotion of general health, safety, and welfare. I would like to tie it somehow to say, this is to fund our road maintenance and construction projects, and that's the fund it should go to. I'm just asking staff to look into that if this gets pushed farther. The 382 definitions for amusement, the two live events, I guess they're okay because we exempt churches, schools, not-for-profits, those sort of things. If somebody does a car show for a charity or a barn dance or something, it wouldn't be taxed. I'm not sure we need to have the live things in. This is a streaming tax. That's the point of it, as Trustee Burson so eloquently put. But on that, the streaming tax, I want to understand it. And the way that it's been explained to me a couple times now is the tax is 5% of the charges paid for the service. So if you pay $22.99 a month for Netflix, what's going to happen here is that the provider will pay the 5%. The user will not see their $22.99 a month go up to $24.14 a month. Netflix will pay it. Now, collecting from Netflix, from what I hear from some, that one might be tough. Others, Hulu, others, you're getting collections from other municipalities. But it's the provider that pays it. The user, the resident, doesn't see a dime on their bill. We need to confirm that, because we've heard that a few times that that's the way it works. If we can confirm that, then what we're doing is taxing the providers, not our residents. That's a replacement income that I think we should consider.
Thank you, Trustee Muncy.
And the reports out of IDOR who administer this at the state, that's exactly the definition they've given the attorney, Carmen Forte, and myself.
Okay, Trustee Morgan, I think you were next.
Thank you, Madam President. Everyone got their tax bill. Everyone's taxes went up. But actually, did you look in the bottom left-hand corner? Your taxes went down by percentage. In 2022, your taxes were 7.500419. In 2023, your taxes went down to 7.265152. So it went down about 0.25%. So saying that your taxes are increasing, your bill's probably going up because your property values are going up. So you need to keep those things in mind also. I have to tell you, I'm not a fan of any new taxes because that's why we moved here in 2018, to follow what this village had provided when they started. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee McKelvey?
Yeah, back to the amusement tax. Again, when it comes to me voting yea or nay, I just want to understand it better. And I think Trustee Muncy touched on that from his perspective. But we hear how people are dropping the cable, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to see just a graph that says in the last 5 years, here's what's happened, or 4 years. Pick whatever time period you want. I don't want to just hear the statement. I want to see what's actually happened. So if someone can show me that business case, it just makes it a lot easier to understand it.
Yeah, and I think on the finance meeting, we did discuss that at one of the early meetings, and it went from a high of 144,000 for Comcast down to like 46,000
Okay.
is what it's at. We can graph that out.
Yeah,
as
but
far
what I'm
back
saying
as
is,
we have records.
we as representing, our constituents here, we need to see that data. That data needs to be crystal clear. I don't want to just hear a statement to it. I want to see the backup data that shows the business case actually that has happened. That's all I'm suggesting.
Go ahead, Trustee Burson.
I agree with Trustee McKelvey on this. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And I've made this request previously in regard to the general issue of taxes. There was a discussion of a slightly different sort of basket of taxes some time ago, and other taxes related to the needs of our roads and so forth. And in all of these discussions, one of the things that I've asked for is if we could see some very simple graphs. I think it would be helpful for the board, and I think it would be helpful for the public. Not complicated graphs with lots of bars and multiple levels and everything, and not 6 or 8 lines that we have to follow, but just some really simple stuff, right? Like, you know, in the case of the streaming tax, this is what it was, this is what it is, this is where it's going, right? And then, or excuse me, the franchise fee that we were currently depending on. And you know, and likewise with the larger issue of why additional revenue is needed. Trustee Muncy mentioned roads, and roads really drive much of this. We could earmark some of this money for roads. We could also say that if we allow some of these funds to pay for other functions at Village Hall, we don't have to sort of borrow as much from our general fund to pay for roads. Either way you look at it, right? And so that's going to be a different discussion to have later. But we can see clearly, and I think if we can get some graphs on this, we'll be able to literally see it and not talk about the numbers, that there is a lot of daylight between our funding sources and expenses that we're not necessarily in control of. And that's the part that we're dealing with here and trying to find a way to make a budget work. And that's the part that we have to try and explain to the public if we're going to ask people to pay for any new tax, however small it is.
Okay, thank you. Janet, any other comments? Trustee Boatner.
Yeah, thank you. I think one thing the village and the residents need to understand is that we're really digging deep. We're looking for everything that we can find that will have the least amount of impact on the residents in order to tackle some of these issues that we have with funding for road work. You know, there's other items, you know, the police department, new bulletproof vests, body cameras. There's things that are important that we need to do for the village. We hear H.R. Green present regularly about how we are so far off and kind of going off on a narrative about, you know, the progression of our road work if we continue at the pace we're at. All that being said, you know, the people in this village, I don't get anybody emailing me, calling me, stopping me on the street saying, Nick, man, our roads are awful. You know, roads are terrible. What are you guys doing about roads? I think when folks move here, you realize there's a trade-off. You know, if you're not paying property taxes to the village, you realize things aren't going to go at quite the same pace that they do in the big city. You know, your road, it's going to take a little bit longer to be repaired. As a village, or as a board, I think we really, I guess I'm echoing what everybody has said, but we really need to have this data really well and easy to read, show everybody what our shortfalls are. I'd really love to have more village input from the residents than just a meeting and then we move into an action item. I just don't even feel like the next meeting, you know, we meet an hour early and we invite everybody to come and listen to the presentation. I still don't know if that's adequate. I really want to make sure that when this is all said and done, that we've clearly conveyed why we would do something like this. Janet, you made a great point. You know, we're losing a lot of those franchise fees from Comcast or those taxes, that this, you know, would be compensating for that. Potentially the Netflix or these streaming fees would be coming from the providers, not from the residents. These are all super positive things that would show our residents that we're really not trying to impose these terrible taxes on them, but we have these really important goals and we need to figure out a way to accomplish them. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead, Trustee Millett.
I think I would ditto everything on this, needing the specifics. The point of, maybe it's a device user fee or something along those lines. But if you never had cable ever, you weren't ever paying the Comcast, or they weren't taking it out of what you paid them type of thing. So, that's, in that sense, yeah, it is a user. You don't, you don't have that, then a tax is what's, broadly across everybody. You don't have other than, to go to the assessor and say my property's overvalued or something along those lines. So the reading the things that are in the amusement tax, the old, let's call it old school, because it says bowling and, dancing carnival stuff. Again, that would be something, you don't do those things, you don't pay that fee. So, yes, I agree. We need to see where we are bleeding from Comcast. That was never something we said we weren't going to do when we incorporated. We specifically said we were going to grab that money from the county, who was spreading it out wherever the heck they wanted to, and then we would have control of where it went, and it was and has been traditionally for roads. The utility taxes, all the major utility taxes we collected have been essentially our capital fund, for lack of a better term. To Trustee Burston's point, too, labor is the one thing we have most, and labor is sitting wearing black shirts in our town for the most part, and we support them 100%, 120%. And we want to get, as Chief just indicated, professional representative officers that everybody wants and that are proud to be part of our police force. And that comes with a price, of course. Now, looking at various inflation indices, labor's been ascendant for a while. Labor's on a roll right now. You look at history, labor management, it's a sine wave. It's what happens. So, at this point, we're trying to react to what labor is demanding, what the market is demanding for labor, and we're looking at different ways. We asked the Finance Committee, hey, what other things haven't we tapped? So, here's some suggestions on things we haven't tapped yet. I would say I'm in agreement with, let's compare where we are with the loss for Comcast utility tax versus the streaming, the amusement tax, and if we needed to clarify these things out, to Trustee Muncie's point, we absolutely can strike everything out. I think we technically can't call it a streaming tax. I think that's in the state statute. So whatever we need to work, and to Trustee Boatner's point, yes, we're going to have a discussion, let everybody know, here's exactly what we're talking about. We're not, is it a new tax? You want to play those semantics? Yeah, it's a new tax. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a new user fee. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a transition from what had been the technology of 17 years ago when we incorporated to what the technology is now. I myself might be in a weird spot because I haven't cut my cable, only because it's my ISP. And it's pretty good down where I am because AT&T never connected. There's a Lightspeed box that's been across my, Ray's laughing. There's a Lightspeed box that's been across my property since 2004. That's old AT&T's. I couldn't have it shorter, and they never ever lit it up down to Roosevelt because the first person in the neighborhood was going to have to pay like all 20 grand or some nonsense. So anyway, side note. I will say I'm not a real big favor of the places of eating tax. We had it when I worked for Clarendon Hills. It can be a thing, I guess, but I don't think it's going to get us as much as any big, is it going to get us another mile of road paved? No. And it can be challenging to track folks down to get the payments out of them. So I don't think I'm a big fan of that. I would like to see more detail, as everybody else has said, about, what is the replacement versus, the original utility tax, the franchise fee. It's actually called franchise fee. Franchise fee for Comcast versus what we think we would be getting out of this.
And AT&T.
Oh, yeah, that's right, AT&T, thank you.
All right, we'll move on because we'll have more discussion on May 21st, which is our second meeting in May. So we'll just move on to 7E, motion to approve ordinance 24-08, an ordinance adopting a simplified municipal telecommunication tax for the village of Campton Hills, Illinois, and again, for discussion only. And go ahead, Trustee Muncie.
Okay, quick questions, pretty much similar on that one. The fourth, whereas, could we tie this to roads rather than just promote the general health, safety, and welfare? then also the 6% tax of the gross charge for interstate or intrastate. Is that collected, again, it's pretty much the same question. Is this gonna be collected by the retailer or from the taxpayer, the person who makes or receives the telecommunications? So is it gonna be on your landline or your cell phone bill? Or is it gonna be paid by the provider and you don't
No,
see it?
This one you will see, and it's up to 6%. The municipality can choose, up to 6% in that. So it's generally, most municipalities do 3 or 6. But I think most of the ones we've seen, they're all 6%.
Okay, thanks.
And they will see it on their tax bill. It will show up.
Okay, trustee Burson?
Yeah, it's typically 5 or 6, and you will, it does show on the bill. It may or may not be itemized. So depending on the telephone provider, it may show as a bundled tax amount that you would need to reach out to them to get an itemization on it. And this would apply to cell phone bills and landline communications. There are no taxes on internet-only service. So if you were to downgrade your Comcast, for example, to internet-only, you'll pay about $65 a month for that in this area. There are no taxes on internet-only service. So that's actually a federal moratorium that's been continued for a long time. But on voice communication services is what this is focused on. And even on cell phone bills, the village doesn't have control if they were to pass this on how your phone bill is apportioned. So you pay a bundled bill of $60 a month or $70 a month. Some of that is voice and some of that is data. They decide how much of that is voice and how much of that is data. And the portion that is taxable is only the data part of that.
I think that is a good point. Some providers, you'll see the 6% local municipal telecommunication, but others will just bury it in their federal and state tax. Taxes and surcharge. A lot of them do just do taxes and surcharge. I looked at some bills that I have access to, and $200 general bill would get you about $18 extra, which should, do the math, that's $120 probably, $140 on average. If you had a $200 bill, that's how much it would cost you annually. That's not nothing, but combined with all the users, that is a lane mile of asphalt maintenance.
Okay. Any other comments on 7E? Okay, we'll move on to 7F, motion to approve ordinance 24-09, an ordinance amending the Campton Hills Village Code regarding compliance with the Local Government Taxpayers Bill of Rights Act. And Administrator Rooney will explain this to everybody.
This is something that's very much local and probably with the flavor of how the village was formed, that any tax of any kind, of user fee or whatever, how it's labeled, or what was your term, Janet? Euphemism, will have to have this ordinance passed. If you pass any of these three or any other fee or tax, you'd have to pass this ordinance because you have to be in compliance with that Bill of Rights that was established in '07. I think it was '07, wasn't it? Yeah, so you don't do this unless you do any of the three.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to 7G, ordinance 24-10, an ordinance adopting a tax on places for eating for the village of Campton Hills, Illinois. And I'm sure there'll be discussion on this one. Trustee Morgan.
I happened over the past 2 weeks since the last meeting visit nearly every restaurant in this village. They're all still hurting from COVID. Their costs have exceeded what they can even have in their budget. Their labor has exceeded. Their rents are being increased. And when you look at the extra work that you're going to put upon a business owner to have to take and separate the receipts from eat in and eat out, and then be able to facilitate that, not to mention what the village's costs are gonna be to facilitate it on our end for a return investment that I heard was gonna be $35,000. I don't think it's correct.
Okay. Any other comments on, where are we?
It may be
17.
helpful if we
Mhm.
find out if there's not support on this one to even have to discuss it at a later
Should we just
meeting.
move
That
on,
was, well.
Maybe if you can take a consensus,
May I?
President.
Or go ahead.
Trustee Burson, do you want to speak? Go ahead.
I don't think that there is support for this on the board, and I know we had, the preface to all this was that we weren't gonna take action tonight, but I don't think the community would hold it against us if we were to take action to say no to a tax. And I don't think that there is majority support for this. I don't think any amount of conversation is gonna change that. And in this particular case, the amount of money that we're going to receive is unknown and probably smaller than any of the other taxes that have been considered. There are questions about the effort involved in actually collecting it, not necessarily, and I know there's some disagreement about that. It's also something that every single resident sees every single time they eat, right? They may choose not to look at it, but it's going to be on every single receipt. So I feel like it's a we're poking people in the eye every time they eat here for not a lot of money. I would also note that we just approved a liquor license for a new liquor store in town. This, as I understand it, this tax would apply to them. I think it's a little bit of a punch in the nose to the guy that's trying to get his business off the ground. So for these and probably other reasons, I would respectfully move that we consider voting no on this tax this evening.
Okay, we're discussion only, so if is there any other discussion? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Janet, thank you for bringing up getting this knocked off the list. I would support getting rid of this as soon as possible. For the small gains that we would stand to make, I think there's a lot more value in showing our small businesses that we support them. We don't know what those gains would be, but we certainly do know that this will impact negatively. We don't know how negatively, but it is going to have some impact on small businesses. I know the restaurateurs in Campton Hills certainly believe that it will. So I would support knocking this off the list as soon as possible.
Okay. Trustee Muncy, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to add a little bit of explanation, if you will. Elburn just passed this. Others have, almost every community around us, you're paying this when you go out to dinner or you get food. It's not because they're evil. I mean, this is a 1% to 2% tax that is a user fee that the user pays. We're talking about 6% on your phone bill, and yet the 2% is all of a sudden unduly burdensome. It's not unduly burdensome on the purchaser, on the user, on the patron. However, from what I've heard, and I don't have examples from surrounding communities, this does sound like it's going to be a rather cumbersome thing to collect, a rather cumbersome thing to have all of our restaurants learn how to do, rather cumbersome on our side to collect, and therefore also, is it worth it? So again, I don't want to say to all our other communities that surround us, this is a horrible idea, I can't believe they do that. I can understand why they do that, and it may make sense for them, but I don't know that it makes sense for us. So I would be in agreement that this probably is not one that we should consider.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McKelvey.
Very quick comment. It's a long run and a short slide. It's not worth it.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to 7H, motion to approve resolution number 24-11, resolution authorizing the execution of reciprocal agreements regarding the exchange of information between the Village of Campton Hills, Kane County, Illinois, and the Illinois Department of Revenue. And
And
Administrator
this-
Rooney will talk about this.
This item
Yeah.
is just authorizing that. I would ask you to take action on this, because then we can actually share information with IDOR, which is the Illinois Department of Revenue, and they then can give us very accurate projections on each of the two that you're still considering. And it's good for budgeting, and then it's good for us truing up, if we passed, hypothetically, did we get the revenue that IDOR said we should have from the telecom providers submitting back through? But the key there too is IDOR collects all of this revenue and then remits it to the village, just like they do to the county on various taxes and user fees or in other entities around us. So it's not like we go to the restaurants and say, show me your ST1 form of what your take was this month. We don't do that. They submit that to IDOR already, and IDOR then would do on the user fee. That's why municipalities across the region do it, because they don't have much involvement other than receiving it once they establish it, because the restaurateur, the liquor license holder, submits their ST1 form and just has to show that in their revenue, and IDOR then takes care of it. So that's why I'd like you to take action on this, so we can get better projections. Whether you do them ever or not, it won't hurt us. It doesn't preclude or make you have to do it on the taxes. It just allows us to get the.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. You doing roll call on this?
Muncy, you seconded, right? No. Oh my God, I did, okay.
Mhm.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McElvey?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Nay.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, and we're getting there. Be patient. 7I, motion to approve 24-11, an ordinance committing to a general fund stabilization reserve, and that'll be Administrator Mark. Mhm.
Yes, this is something that the clerk made me aware of, that the way the village has always done that, you set a very dollar amount for the different funds. And overall, what it means, though, is that you keep 50% of your cash reserves unencumbered dollars that you have in the bank, and you can't spend below that number, and that is one of the fund balance policies this board is operated under for as far back as I can see. And that's what you're doing, is a reflective of the budget, and those dollar amounts are then listed. But it's really saying that we will keep 50% of our cash reserve unencumbered money available and won't spend it for any reason below that without deviating from this policy.
Okay, Trustee Muncy, go
Okay,
ahead.
two things. First of all, before we discuss any further, so moved.
Oh, good. A
Second.
second?
Thank you.
Second by Millet, okay.
Second of all, yeah, I understand that the general fund balance policy, and I'm reading from the ordinance now, the minimum committed general fund stabilization reserve shall be 50% of the next year's budgeted expenditures. And this is based on the general fund balance policy from 2014, which is a responsible and conservative way to handle things. The only question I have, though, is in section 2, pretty far down the page, it says that $3,011,978 of the general fund balance shall be committed fund balance. I didn't read that wrong. Of the general fund balance shall be committed fund balance for the 50% general fund stabilization reserve. I don't really understand why that sentence is written the way it is, and I don't see where that number comes from.
It's our total general fund, I'm sorry, the general fund expenses that, sorry, the general fund budgeted expenses will be, and then it's the 50% of all those funds. I know we went back and forth, didn't we, Tracy, on which items
we
from
don't-
2014 and.
Sorry, may I speak, President Winnick? You have to speak on a turn, sorry. So the general fund expenditures in the last budget that we saw was $3,142,512. General fund revenues was 3,145,944. So you're saying the general fund expenditures, not total expenditures, because that's 4.4 million. But general fund expenditures, 3,142,512, in what is published now online, the draft budget, we haven't seen the final budget yet, so this 3,011,978 is actually the final budget number?
The expense, but we have to have it, your total cash, I'm sorry, this thing, the total cash available that we have invested is just shy of 5 million.
Okay.
And so,
But it
you're
says
gonna
here.
keep your 50, I know it's a very convoluted, I had to talk to Carmen about it 3 times last week.
Well, why
to
don't we
get to
change the
those
way it's
numbers.
written then? It
Yeah.
says the minimum reserve is gonna be 50% of next year's budgeted expenditures. But this is not 50% of anything.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Perhaps the confusion is that the total fund is, I think, is supposed to be 50%, right, which we're well in excess of. I don't think the implication is that the amount set aside this particular year is supposed to be 50% of expenditures. It's the fund itself in aggregate,
Of the, I think if.
and we're well in excess of that.
Trustee Millet, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, reading this again, shouldn't that number be 1.5? Because we're saying 50% of our expenditures is the fund balance. If our expenditures are 3 million, then 50% of that is 1.5 million.
Yeah, I think it's convoluted because it's listing the actual full expenditures, and we can't, we have to keep the fund balance 50% of that number, which should be closer to the 1.5, but I think it's listing the expenses and then saying that you can't spend below your fund balance, cash reserve unencumbered, below that 50% of that number.
Okay.
It did not, I struggled with it too last week, but we went back and forth with the treasurer to try to make sure we're complying. Nonetheless, we are far from violating that policy, and 50% of your expenditures is well above the GFOA standard of usually 30%. So you are very conservative here on what you will spend down your cash reserves.
Okay, Trustee McKelvey? Okay.
Yeah, just to a point that Trustee Muncy alluded to at the last meeting, when we were on the budget and the treasurer was here, there were some changes. We did some things on the fly, and I still see draft online. I have not been sent the final gospel and I think we as board members, I mean, we voted on it. And I know we hand-did the numbers. There were some additions done at the lectern there, so I'm just suggesting that we get a copy of that ASAP.
Trustee Muncy, go ahead.
Thank you, President Winnicky. Is there, just wondering, if there's a timing issue here that we have to pass this tonight, or could we wait until the treasurer comes back and explains this further, or this gets rewritten? To Trustee Burson's points, I agree, and to Administrator Rooney's point, I agree. We are where we need to be in the total fund. It's just the number we're putting in this year, I'd like to really understand it a little better.
I would defer to the clerk. Is there a timing issue for this? It has to be done in May. There's a date.
Yeah, usually it's following the approval of the budget.
So that'd be this meeting. It's not hard and fast. If we defer it till the 21st, that we're not in violation of anything except our own
Our own
policy.
policy, yeah.
So it's your own policy, so it's not a report to the county or to the state. So unless you're gonna hold yourselves in some way negatively, not doing it tonight, you can do it on the 21st, absolutely. Not being a lawyer, I'll defer to the lawyer. There's no penalty. Yeah. It's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Trustee Millet, go ahead.
If we change the number to be 1,506,000, whatever that is, I think we can pass it tonight. Because I think that's clear.
That's 50% of your budgeted expenses.
Or,
And that's what it's intended.
or to Trustee McKelvey's point, if we want to see the number that is the expenses, and then we can put that in, because we always hard code these, like you said, we always hard code these numbers in there, because I think at some point we have to, at some point. I mean, even though we said it's 50%, I think we declare 50% for this coming year means this number.
Yeah.
So I'm okay waiting until next meeting and getting our actual, what our final fly out for expenses is planned to be, and then get that number hard coded in here.
And you're close to just under 5 million in unencumbered dollars, so you are not in any danger, so we could wait one meeting
Move to table,
to the date certain.
Second.
21st.
to date certain on the 21st.
Second, the amended table.
I think it's May 21st.
Okay, we're done then. You have to roll call it.
Could I make a friendly suggestion to postpone it to a date certain?
I did already.
You did. I apologize.
I asked him to do that.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McElvey?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're on to discussion items, paving or maintenance improvement alternatives, and I think that's Scott Marquardt. Oh, can't hear you, Scott.
There we go, thank you. So what you have in front of you is a follow-up from the last village board meeting when just the contract for the road resurfacing was approved. There was discussion that there was additional funding. What did the village want to do with it? So this brings forward 3 options for the village to consider. Before I go through them real briefly, what I want to mention is all 3 of these options treat different segments of your roadway. One option goes to maintain roads in good condition, another goes to maintain roads that are in need of resurfacing, and the third is in between. So if you want to put the additional approximately $64,000 towards road resurfacing, we do have an option in here for additional group of roads from the what we've referred to in the past as the ADAP program, working with the highway district, the highest priority roadways. I have talked with the contractor. He is amenable to do that at the contract unit prices with a small upcharge for maintenance of traffic for that work. It's a contract, which is reasonable because he gets paid maintenance of traffic in the other subdivisions. So it would either be Nancy and Gary, or
And Scott, can I just interrupt? Can everybody find it on their packet? They've got it? So it's good, yeah. I just want
Yeah.
to make sure it's easy, they're following along with.
Yeah, lift your mic up a little bit, Scott.
is that better?
I think that's better.
Okay. So either
Yeah.
one of the groups comes close to the available funding. In discussions with the highway district, of the 2, they feel that Nancy and Gary are in the worse condition than the other. So there'd be available funding to do one of those groups, if you wanted to do that. If you want to instead put the additional funds towards pavement rejuvenation, which would be the work on roads that have been resurfaced within the last few years to maintain them in good condition. I've listed out here all the roads that would be eligible and the estimated costs for those. There's not enough funding to do all of them, so if you want to go that route, I would need direction as to which streets would be done. I would say that the decision, if you want to do rejuvenation, does not have to be made as to which streets today. Once the paving project is done, we would know the actual cost and then exactly how much money is left over. The other option, the third listed on here, is for roadways that are what I refer to as the colors that you all seen on robotics, the pretty good condition roadways, the light green to higher yellows. If you want to look at doing maintenance on those to keep those in better shape, that is that third option that is listed. That is a segment of roadways that the village has not historically worked on. So you've either been doing the
resurfacing, full depth reclamation, which are the orange and the reds, the worst condition. The rejuvenation, which is maintenance of the best roads, which keep them good, which is the greens. This is the in-between. So those are three options, and looking for directions on which of those you want to pursue, or none of them.
Okay. Any discussion? Trustee Muncy.
Thank you, President Winnicke. To rather simplify it, as I've understood, our priorities have been pave as much as we can, fix as many roads as we can every year. And then if we have additional resources available, if the bids come in less or, whatever, then we look at what else can we do. But the first priority remains fix as much as we can, pave as much as we can. Now, in some years, like in past years, if there's not a candidate for that, then rejuvenation or something else, a maintenance treatment to keep some of the good roads better longer is a great option. But when we do have an option like here, where we have Group 1 and Group 3 that really could fit into this, and we can get them paved, I would be an advocate for that. I think we should look at paving those roads, either Group 1 or Group 3, to get these roads done that are in really bad shape.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion? Okay. Trustee Burson?
Nancy Road in particular, it's a little bit of a sleeper. I mean, it's sort of on the boundary of the village, and, it wouldn't seem like it would be a particularly big priority for us, but this is a shortcut, a regularly used shortcut between Burlington and Silver Glen. There's actually quite a lot of traffic on Nancy, I think, compared to other similar short pieces of road. And I agree with Trustee Muncy, particularly, looking at that area, that given a choice this year between rejuvenation and getting another little bit of road done, since it seems like we can actually get this done, I would be in favor of getting it done. If we can find some more money for rejuvenation later, that'd be great.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we'll move on. B is Stormwater Program Update.
Thank you.
I know. Thank you, Scott. I know Mr. Dillon and Rooney had talked a little bit on the floor. Is there any more discussion about that? Stormwater Program update?
Well, I think that we need some details. There's been some discussion. We established the 25,000 in the budget.
20.
Oh, it did drop to 20, I'm
20,
sorry.
yeah.
My memory, it's a good thing you wrote it down. And need that final budget, Mr. McKelvey, so you can see it. But you've got 20, and you discussed having 10,000 or 50% of a stated project of these smaller type projects that could be done self-help. And that, I think, would define it as the two estimates that I got from the Long Shadow Group. They had, I think, around 20 and a 23, so 10%, or 50% would be about 10,000, and what that is your max that you said that you would do on any one project in your policy. So you're looking at the dollars between $1 and 10,000 tonight to move it forward for action next meeting. And or if you don't want to just pay for the project, there was some discussion that you'd pay for engineering. But as I stated, working with Mr. Heitkamp, our Trotter engineer, stormwater representative here, went out and looked at the project, and he was clear that it would cost $4,000 to $6,000 on survey and engineering, but he's like, you don't need it for a permit for the Army Corps because it's not navigable waters of America. It's not a county permit required, and it's not even a village requirement unless they move excess dirt off-site or disturbed. So, and I don't think they would, based on their proposal and their contract and speaking with Ray Weber from Highway. So I think your question would be really focused on how many dollars you would put as an action item for approval next meeting.
Okay. Trustee Muncy, go ahead.
Thank you, President Winnicke. I think it's a little more detailed than that, not just the dollars, but we need to finalize the program. And in doing so, first and foremost, I want to thank Trustee Boatner for bringing this to our attention and pushing this forward continually. Some of the ideas that he and I have discussed are put together in this agenda, item 8B, the SMRF program update. And in addition to that, you see, as Trustee Millette referenced, the Downers Grove program in the back, 3 pages of that. The Downers Grove program is similar, however, it limits cost of said work with a maximum reimbursement of $1,500 per participant, so we're being more generous than they are. And we tried to simplify this, and that's the main thing. That's the main thing, is, keep it simple. Allow people at least 2 projects, big projects a year, or multiple smaller ones potentially, to get reimbursed for this. I am a fan of not us paying for, we shouldn't be involved in engineering, site, nothing. I don't want the liability involved with any of that. If people want to do things on their property, great, do it. And then come back to us for potential reimbursement. If you want to get approved before because you really want some kind of reassurance, that's a possibility. You'll just have to wait. I think it's a pretty simple process, but we do need to move it forward. So my recommendation is, number 1, if anybody has questions, comments, concerns, or revisions to what was proposed, please let us know. Number 2, if not, I'd like to see the village attorney and administrator massage this into something that we can potentially vote on next meeting.
Good. Trustee Millette, go ahead.
All right, my little chortle there was not in any, under my breath said this was 4 years of my life. And you said it sounded sad, I don't know. So, yeah, I don't share that, and I just did. I just was looking at the Downers Grove thing. This is my work, and others. I mean, I was the guy that finalized it and presented it. And the conversation was exactly that. It was these weird little things that affected more than one resident. That was something that would be hard for them. You would expect that they couldn't undertake it on their own. And it was something that, it didn't fall into anything that was the normal part of the village's drainage system where we had other programs, in place to handle it. And there's nothing we're going to get a grant for, so any type of stuff. So I would highly say just change the name and adopt it. But there are some other suggestions. And I like how you've used every type of Smurf down to, you go surf without the. And that's, I'm not trying to, my humor is a deflection in a way, but, it is I've not said it, right? I didn't interact with you on this, right? Neither of you guys interacted with me on this, so I'm happy that you see some value in it for something that's, from previous part of my career. The difference for going forward is, we were talking about these other revenue streams too. Downers has a stormwater fee. It got adopted after some heavy flooding because there are some serious needs in Downers Grove, and that was $75 million worth of detention basins and stream bank stabilization. That's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about unmanageable by one person backyard things because it's coming off the road or it's coming off all the neighbors or that sort of thing. So when we looked at this, we set aside part of that in Downers. We set aside part of those utility fees for this program. So that's what seeds this program in Downers still to this day. So we would need to have a conscious decision like we did when we talked about the budget that, okay, we're going to say of everything that's coming in, we're going to set aside blank for this program. And I think we said 10 was the original number. We upped it to 20 to see how it goes, knowing that if you're going to have 10,000, that barely gets half of what may be a sizable project. It's better than nothing. I hope the folks think it that way. And let's see what is the next one coming after Long Meadow or Long Shadow, and see what's, what may be the next one. And then we can assess it and see, how great or not is the need.
Good point. I think Trustee Morgan first. Yeah. Go ahead.
I too have lived some water problems. Matter of fact, Trustee Muncy drove by my house last Saturday as I was taking my backhoe back out in the backyard to do some more digging to straighten out some water problems that I have. So I can relate to this. The only thing I can see is simplify the name down to SRF, get it on the docket for the next meeting, and let's get some relief to our residents. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Burson, go ahead.
Agreed, let's go ahead and get something passed. When it comes to ongoing and additional funding, I I'll pivot just slightly, if I may, with your indulgence, to our very positive experience with the Technology Committee. In the case of the Technology Committee, we've engaged 5 residents in the village who are, it's been amazing. They're very experienced, very professional. They're working very well together, and so far are getting some good work done for us that we just simply couldn't afford. If we were trying to pay professional consultants to do this, it's just not in the cards for us. And I can't help wondering when it comes to our ongoing funding issues with this, not that it should have anything to do with getting it passed or not. I mean, you know, we should get past what we can get past. But thinking about the future, I wonder whether or not we might be able to enlist our village residents to help us with grant writing and other types of funding opportunities for something like this. In the case of Downers Grove, Trustee Millette mentioned that grants didn't seem to be an option. My understanding is that here, this is actually one of the places where we might be able to score some money. We struggle to get money for roads when it comes to grants, and for other things when it comes to grants. But on stormwater, we might be able to. And I know that we have some residents in the village that have done this. I mean, this is what they do. Whether they would be willing to help us, we don't know, but we haven't asked. And so I'm wondering whether this might be another example of an opportunity where we can ask the community to help us solve a problem, you know, instead of paying a grant writer, for example. Because then, you know, it's a gamble. We might get funding, we might not through that route. But if we can get a committee of village residents to engage in that process, if we win, we win. It's free money, and if we don't, then we try again the next year.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Trustee Boatner, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, I didn't realize this was straight from Downers Grove. You edited and went through all this. You've done a lot to this document, right?
The last 3 pages are straight from the Downers Grove program. The other pages are based on the information that you and I were communicating by email, yes.
Okay. Well, I may have just gotten my pages all mixed up now, but there were a couple things I just wanted to make sure that weren't intended to be in the final. Under reimbursement, whether that's yours or theirs, it's limited at $1,500 per participant. I believe this is our paragraph.
That's the Downers Grove.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because the maximum total for them is also 10,000?
Isn't that strange? Yeah.
Is it? Okay. So we're not going to have that in ours?
No.
No? Okay. And the unassisted confirmation, I saw the couple notes that you had put in there. I like the language in the sentence that was there, that residents must verify on the application that they are unassisted financially by any other means, just to make sure that our funds can help as many folks as possible, and there's no double dipping or anything. So I would like to see that still in there, even with the notes you had put down there. Sounded like potentially you were maybe up in the air about that.
No, that's, if you don't mind the back and forth here.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, the residents must verify on the application that they are unassisted financially by any other means, HOA, POA, SSA, Kane County Township, et cetera. I would intend that stays. However, there was the additional discussion of, should we be looking into, do they have insurance to cover this or whatever else? And after thinking about it, although that seems to make sense, I mean, that's a choice that some people make and how much they carry, and I don't think we should be getting into that personally.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, that sentence does a nice job. My other request was, since we do want to get this done at the next meeting, we've done this in the past. Are you able to send each of us a copy of this and just individually collect any feedback we have before the next meeting?
Sure.
So that way, you know.
I'll do first
Okay.
with what you, Trustee Muncy said, review it with the attorney again. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. If the number is not the 15% or 1,500 of Downers Grove, as I understood that wasn't the intent, we just clean that up. And it's, because it came from another municipality that's used it successfully for 15 years, I'm confident that it's going to pass muster for what you intended to do. So we can, that is going to be done, and you can decide next meeting the dollar amount of the grant that you choose to put in for this project of Long Shadow.
Got it. And in closing, thank you, trustee Muncy, for putting all of this together.
Trustee Millet, go
Just so you
ahead.
know, the 1,500 is just to try to encourage neighbors to participate as a group, that's all. So
Yeah.
that was just
That's
something
good.
that we had in there for that purpose. In this case, I don't think we're gonna see that, because that was part of the scoring criteria too, because if 2 people had a small issue and 5 people came together with a bigger issue, we wanted to kind of favor the 5 people, 5 properties over the 2 when we were talking about this. It being what it is right now, let's just go with a flat 10,000 max per project, define how we define it per what you were saying, and then see where we stand.
Or 50% of, yeah, I think that's a good summary. 1,500 was good when you were young.
Had to throw that in.
President Winnicke.
Yes, go
Just
ahead.
just to
Trustee
clarify,
Muncy.
I too would be a fan of just SRF as the name. I too want to clarify that the last 3 pages here were just, they were kind of all lumped together. That's not part of the program. That's an example of another program that's been running great in Downers Grove. The other pages are our program, which you guys will work on.
All right. Are we moving on here? Okay.
Do we have a motion to move it forward to the next meeting?
I would so move.
Well, it's discussion
Second.
item.
Oh, consensus.
Yeah,
Aye.
consensus would be good. Okay.
Aye.
All right. Moving on, 9, additional items from the president, trustees, or attorney. I have a couple things I want to say just quickly. Month of May is Motorcycle Awareness Month. You're welcome. And then also, several of us from the village met with Campton Township and the Campton Township Highway District and the complainant. And we have a good relationship with Highway, and everything has been resolved, just so you know. Okay, moving on. Yep, Trustee Millet.
So I would like to say, as the parent of a still proud St. Charles North class of 2019 graduate, I would congratulate Tyler Newbin for having been drafted by the New York Giants,
Wow,
part of our state championship runner-up.
cool.
And so congrats to Tyler and his family.
Nice. Anything else?
Yeah, Barb?
Do Trustee Muncy first.
Well, you want me to go first, Ed? Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
McCarthy?
as we enter the new year, I'll see if I can get the tension here.
You guys,
That's okay.
I got
We're not in
gavel.
church, but, yeah, thank you. As we start the new year, I did a little reflection as we look back on the new year, kind of as a group and as a team, as board members. And all of us, as you guys know, we've been through the training, some of us multiple times, been through training as it relates to what our civic duties are. And, you know, we were taught both to respect and keep the confidentiality of our board's closed sessions. I mean, I know we've heard that probably ad nauseum, but we all know that it's guided by the Open Meetings Act. So this current board has been counseled many times. Again, I'll say ad nauseum. That's my prior upbringing, but ad nauseum. Many times on this topic, and recently there's a reason to believe that a member of the board has broken this confidentiality. And like I say, it's a new year, so I'm good. I just want to get to this new year. And I actually believe all of us want to maintain an honest and a transparent government through our discussions in open session. However, in closed session, we're limited, as we all know, to what we actually can discuss. And when someone violates that confidentiality of a closed session, it breaks the trust of this board. And that, it bugs me. that happens, and it should not happen. But in breaking the trust, it also is counterproductive to our duties and is irresponsible to the citizens of this community. And actually, it potentially is a liability to this village when that happens. Now, I was a board member a while back, and so was Trustee Millette, when the board at that time voted 6-0 to censure the village board president. For what? For breaking the confidentiality of a closed session and sharing information with a third party. It absolutely was a disaster. Not the fact that we took a 6-0 vote. That was a good thing because it sent a message. What does a censure do? Well, probably not much, you could say, but I think it sends a strong message as trustees that we hold that as sacred, just as that Open Meeting Act law holds it as sacred. So I would challenge us as we go forward to think of it in those terms. My hope, though, is that we never have to censure again. That's definitely my hope, because that should not be what we want to do. But I want to make clear that if it's ever warranted, then I'm all in, and I would cast another positive vote, just as Trustee Millette did and other members did at that time. So I would hope that you all agree with kind of what I've just said, because I think it's a standard that we have to agree to, that we've got to hold this confidentiality of executive and closed sessions close to our vest, because that's what we're supposed to do. It's that simple. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Trustee McKelvey. I totally agree with you, and on that note, I'd like to get a voice consensus one by one. We can go around. Trustee Muncy?
I think you had a hand up.
Huh?
I would just like to point out that my understanding is that the behavior that, the desired behavior that Trustee McKelvey is referring to is convention. And it is not something that is codified in state statute or in village code. And so to the extent that we feel seriously about the confidentiality of closed session, we might want to consider enacting an ordinance to that effect, because we don't have one. It's not, to your point, it might be a violation of trust amongst other members of the board, and it might create liability for the village. It might create liability for the individual who does it, but we don't have an ordinance that prevents that. And so if you feel that it's a problem, then perhaps we should be considering an ordinance requiring the confidentiality of closed session minutes rather than merely censuring someone after the fact.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I would like a individual consensus. Start with Trustee Muncy.
Yep, I'm in agreement.
If you agree?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
Okay. Trustee Boatner?
Could you just clarify, what are we doing a consensus on? I listened to Jim's statement, I'm sorry, I just don't know, what is the consensus? That we agree with Jim? I agree with everything you said.
Yeah, I think what she's saying is she wants a consensus on whether or not, if that happens again, that we as a group would at least censure the person that did that, publicly censure an open session that the person broke confidentiality. Kind of like I explained that we did years back, Trustee Millette and myself on that
Sure,
one.
okay. Yes.
Yes? Okay.
I'm a yes, obviously.
Yeah. Jim, Trustee Millette?
Aye.
And Trustee Burson? And Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, very good. Let's see.
I have another
Oh, Trustee
discussion item, if you don't mind.
Muncy, yeah.
Thank you. Or, excuse me, additional item. So, last week, the board, and excuse me, I'm going to read a little bit off of this, just how I prepared it. Last week, the board members, we all received an update on the zoning commission activities from Administrator Rooney. And it was a pretty detailed update. We'll just wait till that just Questions? Okay.
I'm sorry.
So as not to influence the process at all, I've let the zoning commission do their job and remained committed to staying out of it until it gets to the board, as we were all told to do. However, now that we've received an update, I do have a few things to say about what I'm seeing. First of all, I want to make sure that I thank each of the volunteer commissioners on our new zoning commission for all their hard work. They've put in a vast amount of work to revise, restructure, and rewrite much of the 2023 zoning ordinance, and they've diligently done that job. The only problem is they were never asked to do this. The board agreed on a mission for this commission, which clearly states, the new temporary zoning commission is not a replacement for our planning commission. The temporary zoning commission is tasked first and foremost to complete the development of the zoning maps required to accompany our zoning ordinance. This zoning commission has not yet looked at the maps. Second, they will also review the zoning ordinance in an effort to highlight any errors, omissions, discrepancies, or other aspects of the zoning ordinance that would make it technically difficult to implement or enforce and/or conflict with the maps. This was read aloud by Trustee Millette to the board when he was named as the board liaison to the zoning commission. Not one of us raised any objection to this limited mission for the zoning commission. So based on the update from Administrator Rooney last week, and then I went and viewed one of the videos from the zoning commission's last meeting, it's clear that this commission has far exceeded its mission and has taken it upon itself to essentially rewrite the entire zoning ordinance based on their own opinions and without regard to the 9-year deliberative process that created the 2023 ordinance. In addition, we now have another non-resident consultant driving this process, also without regard to the commission's mission, and we've now spent approximately $20,000 on his service just to date, directly related to the zoning commission, an expense that this board never discussed or agreed to, and we're not done yet. Finally, I want to make it clear that as I see it, our zoning commissioners and even the consultant are just doing what they thought they should be doing. The problem lies with us. We did not oversee this commission, make sure they got off on the right foot, and reminded them to stick to their very specific mission. Thanks to us, we're getting a very expensive complete rewrite of our zoning ordinance that we didn't ask for and we never budgeted for. As this is just an additional item for discussion right now, I'll defer to President Winnicke for further discussion, but I do have a motion I'd like to put forth before the discussion is before it's concluded.
All right, any discussion? Trustee Millette.
I would,
I know it's not on the agenda.
I suppose the interpretation on whether they've exceeded their mission is whether they're hearing, we asked them to things that would be hard to enforce, we asked them for things that would be conflicting, and if, my thought is if they needed to suss those things out on their own, again, I would not have position to tell them otherwise. And if they come with a recommendation about sections that we thought were a done deal, quote unquote, we could at least see why they thought to make comment on them. To the point of the expense, it's valid. I mean, it's a contract employee, so that is you're right. With an all-volunteer committee and with a limited staff, I guess the challenge is somebody's driving or somebody's seeding the discussion, S-E-E-D, seeding the discussion, which is what Mr. Brown's been doing. And I've heard concerns, not just from Trustee Muncy. And if it's the will of the board, and the other thing is, the one night I can't make it is when they're meeting. If it's we think they've gone too far afield, do we discount everything they've done up to date, tell them stop? Do we have them, double back, et cetera, I'm not sure. But and this has been, I think, a challenge that I've had, again, from my, being a staff person in other towns to being an elected person here, on how much the people, in this case the zoning commission, want to have input to not want to stifle that. And conversations about whether, they're, I think I've heard from probably maybe four people, that, oh, they're putting their personal opinions in it. Well, that's why they're there, in my mind. We've asked them as individuals, as residents of this village, as on that body, to, well, go ahead, does it make it wrong? No. Does it make it right? No. We're asking them to take a look at what we felt was confusing, what was a big issue in the last election, obviously, and how much was the, how far afield we were going from what we originally incorporated when we just adopted the county's zoning ordinance. So if it's our will to change something to clarify or such, okay, I'm willing to listen. And if someone would rather interface, that's fine too. Because again, I have this meeting, I have my work, and I have one Wednesday night meeting that I can't get out of. So if it was felt that a different trustee would be in a position to do it, I'm fine with that. I wouldn't take personal offense. But I would say, and again, there's a chairman. He's been here since the beginning of our incorporation committee. He was a plan commission chair prior. He kind of knows the lay of the land, and I think he knows, in conversations I've had with Rolf, is not whenever, it can be challenging to get to a point where people feel they haven't been heard. And I think that's part of where we were. But now, has that gone too far to the point where we're worried about, or we're justifiably concerned about the time in it? Okay, I'm fine to have that conversation. So that's my point.
Okay, Trustee Burson.
I understand and appreciate that that Trustee Muncy has strong feelings about the zoning ordinance as it was passed in 2023. I think the community made it very, very clear in the election last year that didn't work and that we need to reconsider. When we, I believe the word errors was in the scope. Well, this is a kind of a slippery word. What does errors mean? What type of error? Is it a, say, technical error? Is it an error in judgment? Is it political error? I think there are a number of people, I think the majority of people in the community made it clear last year that they thought that much of the ordinance passed in 2023 was passed in error. So I don't see an issue with scope when it comes to the zoning commission. I don't agree with everything that they've chosen to do, and I knew that I wouldn't. I figured that all of us would come through this process. We would watch it for the most part, and we would say, well, won some, lost some, right, as far as how it all came out. But it seems to me, from what I've seen, that the zoning commission is focusing to a great extent on issues that are of concern to the community, that were reflective in the last election, and I don't see wholesale changes in the ordinance. I see adjustments. I see some modifications that, taken in their entirety, may may bother some people, and everybody has their sensitivities. But I feel that if we were to let them continue this process, the ordinance that we're going to be presented with to approve or not approve later this year is going to look quite a lot more like the ordinance that was passed in 2023 than the ordinance that preceded it. I don't think we're going to be looking at a completely different animal here by any means. And I think that the concern is frankly not really very justified.
Trustee McKelvey.
Yeah, my comment was, I remember when trustee Millette read the charter, or what I call the charter that, I know Ed had worked on, into the record, and we all nodded and said, go forth and prosper. And then I've watched the meetings, and that charter has been, was thrown over the board a couple meetings ago. So that's the only concern I would have. I feel that that charter is not being followed. The other thing that surprised me a little bit, but it is what it is I was led to believe it was going to be 2 or 3 meetings. Now I'm hearing it's going to be through August. And I feel like it's Groundhog's Day, because it took 9 years before. And now we're going this other extra mile. And, the comment on the $20,000, and we talk about roads, today I brought up a legal bill that to me hit us from left field, another $5,000. Here's another $20,000. I think the important piece, and I'm not saying you can't make any changes, I'm not suggesting that, but that was a long and very deliberative process. And it was during a pandemic where we had Zoom meetings and lots of people attending on there, and then we had open meetings and tons of meetings. So anybody can say that was not open is not being fair. It was certainly deliberative. And so when Trustee Millette read that charter, I was good with it. I thought that's it. The big thing was the maps. We got to get the maps. And I don't think we've really on the maps yet, but we're still,
Tomorrow night.
Okay, tomorrow night. Okay, meeting 5 on maps. Okay, but to me, the big thing was the maps. And we haven't even touched that yet. So those are my concerns. And what I'd hate to see is it come to the board and then we go down this rabbit hole again, because I just don't want to. I don't want to, and pardon the pun, I didn't mean to say rabbit hole, but I'm sure they're allowed, so I'm okay.
Yeah. Trustee Muncy.
Thank you, President Winicki. The one thing that I would say is that I think this is farther away from what we intended them to do than some people are saying. I think this definitely is a rewrite in many cases. We can talk about the definition of error as much as anybody would like, but when, there's a deliberative process and people make up their mind and they do so with a lot of public influence and comment, and then they go ahead and make an informed decision, I don't think that's an error. I think that was what they meant to do. And that was the process. I would also say that I think that the election, I've heard 2 or 3 comments on that. I think the new candidates brought a lot more to the table than just flip the zoning, I would hope. But what I would say is that the process itself, I don't think it's where we wanted it to go. So I'll give you an example, a couple examples. So as you all know, we were instructed on several occasions by the president, by the administrator, and by the attorney that those that will decide on the process later should not act to influence the process or be involved in it in the earlier stages. We were expressly told not to make public comments to the zoning commission or to reach out to commissioners in an attempt to involve ourselves or influence their work. I just wait because I don't want the attorney to hear this as well. Regardless of this clear instruction by the president, the administrator, the attorney, Trustee Burson, yourself, you've held a private meeting with the commissioner of the Planning Commission for over an hour. You've held a private meeting with the consultant building and zoning officer for over an hour and a half. You've privately called the majority of zoning commission members for inquiry and discussion. You've made a public comment yourself to the zoning commission advocating for changes that you'd like to see in an effort to influence the commission. In addition to Trustee Burson, Planning Commissioner Boren has also made public comments to the zoning commission on multiple occasions, going so far as to provide multiple pages of detailed written recommendations. We were all told that anyone that could see this later in the process should not participate in, comment in, or attempt to influence the zoning commission. Trustee Burson and the planning commissioner Boren have flagrantly violated this, disregarded the president, administrator, and attorney, and the will of this board. None of the rest of us we've stayed away from it. Unfortunately, though, once again, who has stopped them, or at least even told them that it was wrong? None of us. We have to let this, we've let this process go off the rails, and it's time to get it back to where it was supposed to be.
Trustee McKelvey, go ahead.
That's the first I ever heard that. If that happened, that's horrible. Because again, you didn't follow directions. And that's just wrong, okay? So that's my comment. But my other comment was going to be, going back to Trustee Millette, you had suggested that, I'm sensing from a time element that you cannot participate. Is that what I'm hearing you say, or because if you got a conflict or something? I'm
Correct.
sorry. Okay, so you're asking for another member to replace you, another board member?
If we so need some member, because to the original point, we shouldn't be influencing the meeting either. That's my point. The meeting I was able to attend, I said the initial part and let him go, and I will be honest, if I were at the meeting subsequent to this, I would not have inserted myself to shut down the conversation. I do not believe that's for those of us who will be hearing it later,
Okay.
to review, I don't think that's my role as the liaison. If that's wrong, if I misinterpreted that, again, we can correct that. We can have someone else replace me for that purpose. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and again, my earlier comment was about what I call the charter, call it whatever you want, what you read into the record. To me, if you veer from that, though, as a liaison, you would say, hey, guys, I mean, I don't think you tell them where to go, but if they're veering from what the charter was, I think you'd have to say, hey, we need to steer back because that's not what the board has basically set as the course. That'd be my only comment on that. So I was suggesting if you can't make those meetings, I was going to suggest, whether it's Mr. Muncy, I would suggest Mr. Muncy to do it. But anyways, I'm just throwing that out there.
Just a note, I've been filling in for Mike because I know he's been unable to attend, but I try to also not influence the decisions that are made. I kind of take notes and, if somebody's veering off in the wrong direction, I privately talk with them. But Trustee Burson, you had your hand up, I think.
Oh, I did, since there were allegations made specifically involving me, some of which are not entirely correct. So, first of all, when it comes to discussions with members of the Zoning Commission, I have not had any discussions with any member of the Zoning Commission once they were appointed. There are people who are on the Zoning Commission who I've had conversations with before they were appointed when they were citizens, which I'm fully entitled to do. And frankly, I'm fully entitled to do any of the things that were discussed here. Your expectations, Trustee McKelvey, over what you think are right or wrong in terms of how someone should behave in this situation are appreciated, I suppose, but not dispositive. I don't have to do what you say. I don't have to do what anyone here says, actually, right? That said, I have not had conversations with the members of the Zoning Commission since they've been appointed. There was no indication that a conversation with our BZO was out of bounds, so I really don't accept that criticism. And when it comes to my public comment, which I made as a private citizen, and you can say that when you're a trustee that you can't really do that, but you can, and I did, was focused primarily on the complete and utter silliness of saying that people can only have detached structures of 900 square feet and then they can only have 2 of them, when at the same time they might be able to have a 15 or 20,000 square foot house. And if they were to have a 5,000 square foot house and they were to build a 5,000 square foot additional structure, otherwise detached structure that would be not legal under our ordinance, as long as it's connected, as long as they have a breezeway, an issue that we confronted with the variance that we passed on the Batista property not long ago, it was completely clear that this notion of 2 detached structures makes no sense, limited to 900 square feet, and that it has no bearing at all on the issues that we're concerned about with intensity of land use. So seeing that we didn't seem to be, proposing any change to a provision which was not ever fitted to this community and was lifted wholesale from another municipality's ordinance, I did in fact make a comment, and I do not apologize for it.
Trustee Millet, go ahead.
Looking at the update matrix, the last piece. Section 1's ready, Section 3 is ready, Section 8's ready, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are ready. Tomorrow night, there are 5 things to go. And then the discussion on the map. So maybe the part of the concern I'm hearing is, that memo that came out said how much more time they were going to need. Presuming they settle on the 5 outstanding articles tomorrow, which they could, say they do 4 of them, then there'll be off-street parking and loading, signs, and then whichever those ones they don't settle on. So there will be 3 things left of sections. Signs, I don't know how long that would take. It shouldn't take that long, hopefully. So maybe the direction we've been talking about is to use our administrator to revisit that and see, can we not get that done in a couple meetings instead?
And when we say August, they're going to go to the summer schedule that the village board has adopted for June, July, and August to have 1 meeting, not 2 a month. And that's what's kind of pushing it out, too. I should have clarified that.
Okay, I think Trustee McKelvey and then Trustee Muncy.
Yeah, Trustee Burson, my comment was only, as it related to what we were told to do by the administrator, the president, and our legal counsel, as stay away, not have meetings, not do any of that. So my reaction when I heard that was related to that, because I do think we should follow that direction from the president, from our legal counsel, and from the administrator as it related to that.
Okay, Trustee Muncy.
Thank you. Again, Trustee Bursi, you made it clear that you don't think that you have to follow the advice of the village attorney, the president, the administrator, or the board. You've clearly stated that. But then you went ahead and advocated for a position. And we're not here to do that right now. That's something that, when it comes to us, we will do. Because we're not advocating for specific positions within the zoning ordinance or specific aspects of it, which you're doing. I'm talking about the process as a whole, and feel that it has been flawed. I would like potentially to follow Trustee Millet's suggestion that we have the administrator work with the chairman of the commission to get things back on track, move things along. I was going to move that we asked them to cease any and all activities beyond that stated mission, to rescind and revoke anything that they did that was beyond that mission, and adhere to the mission. However, hearing here today, that will be disputed as to what that mission is defined as, so I'd like to just move it along as expediently as possible, and then have the public have plenty of time to comment on it from their perspective, have us have plenty of time to hear that and work on it as well.
And that is the takeaway. I think this board will take a look at whatever fine detail that you choose to look at each section as they have done, or you'll take a more broad stroke and just focus on the areas of most concern to this board. Mm-hmm. You're not bound to accept every recommendation they have, even on the maps. The maps, they're going to do a lot of detail work, and we're going to work very closely with them, with the attorney, to make sure we get that right, because that is, in anywhere USA, the weak link on a zoning code is the map. And that's what we got to get right, because that's what people depend on in a very macro level. They look at our site, look at their zoning map, and know with some level of confidence what they can and can't do. So they're not violating a village ordinance or code. So we'll spend a lot of time getting those maps right, and we've started already with some of that, and I do believe they'll get, even with one meeting a month, they're gonna get there in August. And I'll work closer with the attorney and Rolf to do that.
Okay, we'll move on. Trustee Muncy, we cannot have a motion on this because it wasn't on the agenda. So, but thank you for your hard work.
But I think I got direction.
Okay. All right, anything else? We got Trustee Morgan.
Madam President, Madam Clerk, Village Board, Campton Hills residents, effective the end of this meeting, I resign my office as village trustee from the Village of Campton Hills. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work for this community for the past year. Thank you.
Any comments for Trustee Morgan? We will miss you. Thank you. Okay. I'll accept a motion to go into closed session. It will be closed session for appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, dismissal of specific employees or contractors, litigation that is filed and pending or is probable or imminent, and there'll be no action after executive session, so
I would so move if that's,
do you want me to say that too? One more thing, the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined
oh,
in this act, including a vacancy in the public office.
so moved.
Okay. Moved by Trustee Millet.
Second, Muncy.
By Muncy. Roll call.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Muncy?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Morgan?
Abstain.
And thank you all for coming and your patience. It was a long meeting this evening, and we will miss Trustee Morgan.